to the Mostly Potted at Night. Mostly, I am Salem, joined by my co-host Graveyard.
Hello.
This is episode 25 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. Tonight we'll be diving into our first installment of the works of Dario Argento. This episode will include Suspiria, Tenebrae, Demons 1 and 2. Yes, I know Dario Argento did not direct Demons 1 and 2, but he is co-writer and producer and heavily involved in the making of. Just based on their famous level of those movies, we're including them here.
Yes, absolutely.
They were actually directed by Lamberto Bava, who's the son of the great Mario Bava, also one of the masters of Italian horror.
Yes. I'm excited for these. Like I said, we'll as we get into these, but yeah, I mean, Italian horror, especially 70s, 80s, we tend to overlook that, I feel, in this country a bit. But they are definitely part of, what should have been part of our childhood, I'd say.
Well, yeah, you'll find a lot of people that will bring up old Italian horror stuff, but you won't find a lot of people who have actually watched them.
Right.
So I think people recognize how influential and important they are, and just not many people actually watch them or watch more than one.
Correct. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I'm guilty of that as well. I mean, I didn't talk about how great Italian horror was. I knew that Italian horror was a big factor into it, but I hadn't really watched a whole lot of them. A couple, few, but not these. So
correct. I'd probably say the Italian horror would probably be Zombie and Cannibal Holocaust. For me.
Yeah, I did watch Zombie before. The Lucio Fulci's Zombie. Yeah. I did watch that before. Because I was trying to do watch all movies in the zombie realm at one point in time, and that was one of them.
There's a lot in that zombie franchise.
Yes. Well, there's a lot, especially in that era. European horror around that time was a lot of zombies.
Right.
Or things that can be considered zombies.
Yeah, I think he's going to be another, writer-director spotlight that we're going to do. Especially because it does tie in. It's like, I think Zombie 4, they call it Evil Dead 4. Which was very confusing when I first had internet and looked that up and go, what?
Well, yeah, it's just the translation. But.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so we will start off with Suspiria. And I believe you're going to start the recap of this one.
Yes. Yeah, so interesting enough, you have the two different releases that exist. You have obviously the original Italian release where everything's in German and Italian. And you can get, the dub version or the subtitle. I happen to have both, as I found out.
Well, I'm a purist. I watched it in Italian with subtitles. I'm not actually a purist. That was just the only version I could find. So that's the version that I watched.
Yes. But yeah, it was. I was watching like, oh no. But anyway, so surprisingly enough, it follows an American actress and an American student who her name's Susie. We're not going to call her, protagonist one. I'm just making sure we have her name. But essentially, she kind of arrives at an airport, which airport was very familiar. It's like same airport as Nabra, but she's in Germany, and it's pouring rain. She has, I consider, very little luggage for moving across the ocean to a different place and living there for.
Well, yeah, but
2 years.
she's also like a ballerina, so all of her dancing clothes are really, really tight. So they probably take up a lot less room in the suitcase, is what I'm guessing is happening here.
And that's fair. But yeah, she gets picked up by a cab, and it's funny that she's trying to practice her German on him, and he could not. The taxi driver could not understand her, so she's writing it down.
Well, because she was saying something, and then he was like, "Oh, you mean this?" And it sounded exactly the same to me, but I'm guessing, if you're from Germany. It could be two completely different words, I guess. But yeah, I think he was just being a jerk about it.
Oh yeah, he was pretty creepy guy, I would say.
Yeah, he was not nice.
No.
He's not a German ambassador.
Definitely not.
American dancer girl.
No. So, so she arrives there really late at night. What was they like 10 o'clock at night, which
11.
is 11 o'clock, which is really, really late. Like, you could plan these things out, I think, a little bit better time frame wise.
Well, Europe is a little bit looser with time, so
yeah. But anyway, she gets there, and the taxi driver was actually nice enough to wait for her and not just drive away. But she gets to the dance school, and this big prestigious dance school that very excited to be a part of. And she like rings the doorbell, not the doorbell, but like the intercom, like and talking to like, I'd say a very raspy woman's voice. It's like, go away.
Right.
And she's like, wait, no, I'm here because I'm supposed to be here. I know it's late at night, and just kind of nothing. And then, we assume a student at this point in time, a young woman runs out of dance hall when she's talking back to the guy, because you think she would let her in, or she kind of just pushed her out of the way and closed the door and locked. But anyway, this young woman escapes and starts running, seemingly in terror, like she's running for her life.
Right. Yeah. The funny thing was, she was just like casually watching her like run through the rainy forest while she's just leaving in a cab.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah. So she goes, okay, I have to go stay. Go to an apartment. I don't know if they really say just goes to a town and stays there. I don't know. They don't really show that. But we follow then the young woman named Pat, who we see almost like a slow motion run, and she's like almost neck and neck with the cab as it's driving and she's running. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, she is a trained dancer. So yeah. She can run on the tips of her toes, which makes her run faster.
Yeah. And so we kind of follow Pat, and she goes and ends up like, I don't know if it's her friend or like almost like a sister. She treats her like a sister, I'd say. But in this like really, really exorbitant apartment or hotel, probably apartment, right? And just scenery, it reminded me a lot of the Vincent Price stuff that we reviewed like in our second episode, like the big atmospheric, colorful, vibrant scenery, but a lot of glass work.
Well, this is it's contemporary, but this is also late 70s contemporary.
Right.
So, yes, that's what
European late 70s.
Right, yeah, European late 70s contemporary, which to us seems odd, but yes, that was their like top tier fashion at that time.
Yeah, but like lots of red.
Yes.
Absorb like even the elevator she gets in is very sinister looking, just the big giant glass light that's just like moving around on it.
Right. Yeah,
elevator goes up.
Yeah, throughout the whole movie there's a great use of color. Like fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that I know this movie gets praised a lot for that. So we're not obviously the first ones knows that, but like Argento himself is a great atmospheric builder.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she gets in there and she's like, okay, something bad happened at the school, and then she's kind of looking out the window, and I'd say they look like man arms because they're so freaking hairy.
I'm pretty sure they were man arms.
Yeah. Starts kind of like goes through the school, and she's not on the first floor, mind you. She's like second or third floor.
I don't know. Not ground floor.
Not ground floor, but someone's able to get up that side of the building and starts strangling her at first, but then kind of comes in and then has a knife and like really stabs her a lot. And we get to see all of it, right? So big thing is like, cuts open her chest to expose her heart, and then proceeds to slice the heart and stab the heart through that opening. And then, essentially, what it was not even a phone cord. It was like a coax cable, I would say.
Yeah, probably.
Like an antenna cable.
Right.
And then throws on top of, I think being cut open, your heart sliced open like that, and then your heart stabbed is pretty much you're dead. But just for good measure, also hangs her from that coax cable and goes through the building's really brilliant skylight, right? It's beautiful. It's a good stained glass, just very colorful. And her friend was trying to figure out what's going on. She's like, my friend's getting murdered. She's able to hear it, but she couldn't get in there. And she's like screaming, my friend's getting murdered to like all these other doors, and no one was responding. And then she gets down there and sees what happens, sees that. And as her friend's thrown through the skylight, you see all the glass falling down, and then we show kind of the aftermath. And she has just like a gnarly slice of glass through half her head. And her friend's also dead, stabbed, multiple places with the glass.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, like I think it was like the metal that was holding that picture window together.
Yeah. So, I mean, this gnarly, almost like Wolfman arms, got a 2-for-1, right? So that's just kind of we fade, and then we get into Susie coming into the school the next morning, and everyone's already going. So she was really late the night before, and she was really late that day. It seems like there's like everyone's already up and dancing and all that stuff. So Susie goes in there. She's like, I tried coming here last night. It's like, we didn't hear anyone. I saw an answer. Who? A woman. Well, that didn't help.
Yeah, the school is all women.
Oh, there's some guys.
Yeah, the groundskeeper guy who doesn't talk. And
there was like 2 dancers.
Well, yeah, 2 dancers. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It doesn't narrow it down. Out of the 50 students, like 2 of them are male.
Yes. Her stuff's there, and she's like, oh, by the way, I don't know if we told you, but this each week it's $50 to stay here. She's like, oh, no, I'm going to stay with, what was it? I don't remember her name.
Olga,
yeah. Because she didn't want to stay there because she's going to go into like essentially a boarding school. Is how she felt like it was, right?
Right.
And I did the calculations. That's $200 a month for room and board and seemingly food. That translates to that's $2,400 a month. That's equivalent to $12,000 right now, American dollars.
I mean, that's about normal for tuition.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually decent for tuition. I mean, some of those schools go crazy, like 20 grand and up.
Yeah, but that's still a pretty chunk of change. Like, obviously they have to work and make that money, or have it and have rich parents to send them there. We don't really find out what the case actually was, I'd say.
Well, back in those days, it's I'm sure they're fine.
Yeah. And so she goes, okay, well, money's not the issue. I just was going to stay with Olga. Like, okay, you can do it. It's your life. You can do what you want with it. I'd say the head instructor, she was like Frau Frobishna. I feel in Austin Powers, she gave off that vibe, like that strict, I have this stick that I'm going to hit you with German teacher.
You mean the instructor lady?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the instructor lady had like the high and tight haircut, I don't even know, how do you just describe that? Like the
like BDS, like a mistress from BDSM almost.
Yeah, but it was like okay, like in the movies in like the 80s or whatever, whenever they would say like, oh, this East German woman, and they would always have a woman come out that's like, very like strong looking.
Yeah.
And she'd always be wearing that weird kind of power suit with the skirt that goes below her knees.
Yes.
And like the jacket that looks like a uniform. Like that's what she was wearing.
Yes. And like she has like the riding whip almost.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. She's like, okay, well, get dressed. And she's like, do you have shoes? Yeah, they're in my bag. Well, oh well. You'll have to get shoes from somebody else. Which her shoes were there. I don't know why they couldn't just let her get her shoes from her bags, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole thing, I don't know why they did that. It was just very odd because then like
Yes.
the next scene, she borrows shoes from this other lady. And then the lady's like, oh, you can buy them if you want.
$50.
Yeah. And she's like, no, I have my own shoes. I just need them for today. And the lady looked all offended.
Like, oh,
Like,
okay.
Fine. Then.
As long as you give them back.
Yeah. And then she leaves the story and never comes back. It's like, why are you there? Like, what was the purpose of that?
Yeah. And then essentially we get the exposition dump of, oh, this American girl. And like I'd say that some of them start harassing her right off the bat.
Well, yeah, because her name starts with an S. So she's a snake.
And all S's, names that begin with S are for snakes.
Right. Snakes.
They kept seeing at her. And then they went into, okay, I've never done dance, but it looks like at the most uninstructed dance, everyone just did their own thing. Like, what are they practicing for? They're just doing their own moves. And then someone just watching them. Like, it was the weirdest dance. Like, my kids took dance class. I've watched some of them. That had more instructions and coordination and structure than that.
I'm pretty sure that Argento was not focused on the dance aspect of this movie.
No.
And I'm pretty sure they didn't even hire like a dance consultant or anything. He just was like, okay, you guys are dancers, so dance.
Do some dance moves that you know.
Right. And that was it. That was all that they did.
Yeah.
There was no formed dance or anything like that. It was just
right. They're like not practicing for big ballet or recital or whatever. Right?
Just do whatever you want to do.
Right. Which we actually see later on too.
Yeah.
Not dance, but like we'll get into it. Like I'd say a scene in Demons was the same way. Demons 2, like the gym. So, and then Susie gets very faint and she passes out. Right. And then kind of she regains consciousness and they're like, oh, here's your room, by the way. You now owe us $50 a week.
Yeah.
And here's a doctor doing that you never met. And here, drink this. Let's shoot you up with this stuff. And here's you, and you can only eat like soup, an apple, and like coffee.
Yeah, well, yeah, they said it was no rich food. It has to be all bland food.
Right.
And red wine. And a big glass of red wine. So it was like all bland food and a big glass of red wine. And the other thing, the weird thing is that right before she felt faint, she got hit with that like light beam from the weird like kitchen lady. That was just holding like a big crystal. And like she got hit with the reflection of the crystal, and that's what made her all faint.
Yes. And what do you call her? She's we see her in the kitchen later on, but she looks like she could have had those manly, hairy arms too.
I mean, it's very possible.
That was my interpretation. Like that might have been her. So essentially, she's now been given drugs, a strict diet because she has the vapors, and now is forced to live in the school, which she didn't want to do because Olga kicked you out. She goes, what? No, she didn't. Why would she do that? No, she kicked you out. Okay, and she kind of goes with it, which is really odd.
Well, it was kind of like a thing. She's like, they're like, yeah, Olga doesn't really want you there anyway, and she's like, no, Olga didn't say that. I don't believe that. And she's like, well, it doesn't matter because you have to stay here because you're sick anyway. Right. It was like they just kept coming up with excuses to keep her there,
which is very, very suspect. In the way, like, you have to be here, and now they're all this crap, right? So yeah, then she meets her. Does she have a roommate, or she's someone next door?
Yeah, it's just Sarah. She's just next door, but
to Sarah, right? Yeah, and she becomes friends with Sarah, I'd say, and they have conversations and such. We are introduced to the headmistress. I don't know. She seems pretty odd in a way, but she was very off-put by some of the things she said, and was the one that was forcing her, like, hey, you're going to stay here and all that stuff. So
She was the vice headmistress.
Vice. Oh, because the headmistress is the one that comes in later.
Right.
Yeah. And she's very strict, but like they're all like very. I would almost say, would you say gaslighting her to stay there?
Well, yeah. The whole thing was a big gaslight operation.
Yeah. And then I think then we come to one of your favorite scenes in this movie. They were preparing for dinner one night, and all of a sudden, like, I thought there was some like connection between Sarah and Susie, because Susie starts like violently grasping at her hair for no reason. It seems like all of a sudden, and then Sarah did the same thing, almost mimicking exactly the same thing. I would say. And she's pulls out her hair from a maggot, and she looks in the ceiling. There's like maggots coming through the ceiling, and like everyone in that floor, all of a sudden there's maggots coming down, and we are shown from the upside right at this point that there's like containers up there that was just overflowing with maggots, and it's coming through the floor and falling down onto the students.
Well, the super gross thing is that they were coming out of a salami.
Yeah.
Okay. And a salami is meant to be like cured and preserved and last for a long time. So do you know how long that had to have been sitting there in order for it to get rotten enough for maggots to live on it?
Probably when the headmistress started the school.
Yeah. I mean, it'll take a while.
50 years before.
Yeah. It'll take a while.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. Salami is cured, salted, and you didn't have fresh meat in the winter.
Yeah, like I said, it's not going to last forever, but it'll last a while.
Yes. Yeah, because even mold takes forever to grow on salami.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So they're like, okay, everybody needs to go now sleep in like the gym or the dance studio.
Right.
And they're like, oh, isn't this just like camp? Ha ha ha.
Yeah, like, hilarious.
All right.
And then for some reason, okay, so they're all in there, right? And they're like, okay, let's turn the lights off. They turn the lights off, and there's like this ominous red light coming from the other side of the sheets. Yeah, because they have like sheets, like bed sheets, like in a circle around all the girls.
Because separate them off from like the two boys.
Right. Yeah. So that's what they said. And then there's like all this like creepy red light coming through the sheets.
And you see a shadow of someone sleeping on a bed behind them. And they don't even mention the red light.
No.
It's really weird.
Yeah, no one mentions it. There's like this weird music. There's like lady is snoring like she's like a monster or something. I mean, it sounds like
it's almost like an iron lung sound, but animalistic.
Right.
And like they're trying to fall asleep, and I had a hard time hearing the rasping because the music was so loud. I'm like, all right, am I supposed to be hearing this gasping and rasping as well? Because they all of a sudden, like, everyone seems to fall asleep, like, with that bright light and that sound. There's no way in hell I'd be sleeping, especially if they're right behind me.
Well, it's also interesting is because they don't really show it at this point, but a little bit later on they do. They show that whatever she's being fed at night has like sleeping drugs in it.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure that everyone who lives in that place is getting like sleeping drugs in their evening food, because their supper is at like 9:30 p.m.
Yeah.
Like right before bedtime. So
yeah. And then Susie does have this, does like sleep through a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, she's obviously being drugged to sleep.
Yeah.
Like she can't stay awake. So I think that's why they were okay with all this stuff.
Yeah. And then, Sarah, her friend Sarah was like, I heard that before when the headmistress was supposedly staying here. I heard this because she's in the room next to me or down the hall or whatever it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the same sound I'm hearing. The headmistress must hear. They don't look behind them to see this blatant shadow there. And yeah, and she's like, well, she's supposed to be out of town, so this can't be her, but it sounds just like her. And something that at this point in time, we can also say that Sarah, Susie has a superpower where she knows exactly how many footsteps people take and in what direction.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, that's magical.
It's
Because
very magical.
like later on when she's following the path, like she's far away
Like
from
she
their
knew
room.
exactly where they turned and how far.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Steps on like 8 hallways through a different floor.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, she's got like supersonic hearing.
Yeah. She's mute. It's Xavier's School for Gifted.
Yeah. Maybe she's got like that miracle ear or something.
Yeah. So yeah, so kind of what the next day, the pianist comes in and he's blind and he has a guide dog, and that shows how good his dog is. He just kind of drapes the leash over the rail because guide dogs are supposed to work that way. And then we see the head cook, whoever, bring like the most German kid I've ever seen to the dog.
He was like literally wearing lederhosen. I mean, it was like
blonde hair, blue eye.
Yeah, ridiculously German.
And like they made it sound like the dog attacked him. And Hans, or whatever they would call him, Hans, the kid. Hans, yes, Hans. And then they go, your dog attacked him, and he's like, well, my dog's never done anything like that. And they fire him, and he has to find his coat that's on the floor. And it's just this big dramatic scene.
Yeah, well, yeah, the lady throws his coat and his blind cane on the floor.
Yeah.
And makes him look for it himself. It's like, wow. I mean, even if you're that really angry, it's a blind dude, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And you feel sorry for the guy. He seemed
But all the other students didn't bat an eye. Didn't really bother them at all.
Nope. So kind of showing that, the head instructor is just a bitch.
Yeah.
And they don't want to get on her bad side either. And that's how I took it.
Yeah, I mean that's probably true. It was just you think somebody would have said something or helped the poor guy,
right? Yeah, and they just like she's able, because Susie's able to hear him leave and all that stuff. And then do we cut to him later that night?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's right around there.
Yeah, and so he's walking his dog and like. A gorgeous park. It's just wide open and just like old masonry and like gargoyles and stuff like that.
Well, it looked like kind of like they're, I don't know, like a center of government almost.
Yeah,
like it looked like what do they call it? I don't know, whatever they call the thing in DC.
Yeah.
Where everything's around.
Yeah, the park where you have the big water fountain. You have like Lincoln Memorial on one side and the Washington Monument.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
They have a name for that area, and it's escaping me right
now. Yeah. But anyway, like there seems to be like an unknown or unseen force kind of following him, and it shows like a gargoyle on the building, and we cut back to it, and it's not there anymore. And then all of a sudden the dog goes crazy, and it's clearly a puppet on someone's hand, and it rips his throat out.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the gargoyle. I'm like, that was a weird thing. But yeah, his dog does turn and kill him. And then, they hear, that stuff. Yeah, I mean, dogs having a good old time eating whatever that was. There's a weirdly cut thing. But like I said, for probably the budget, it worked well.
Well, yeah, it was. Yeah, the dog was tearing flesh off of something.
Yes. Yeah, and then the puppet hand was
yes
around his neck. Yes,
correct. It's probably his own hand, honestly.
Probably, yeah. It wouldn't surprise me. So then we go to the students. Did they tell him that he got killed by his dog?
Yeah. They do, but it's just kind of passed over. Like nobody cares, right?
Yeah.
Nobody seems to say like, well, that's odd. He was just fired yesterday.
Right. Yep. No one does anything. Just weird coincidences.
Yep.
And then Sarah and Susie go swimming in probably the darkest lit pool I've ever seen.
Well, yeah, we're going for ambiance. We're going for atmosphere.
Yes. And she's like, hey, my friend Pat, I was the one on the intercom that told you to go away. That was me.
Well, yeah, the reason why is I think that she knows that inside the pool is the only place they can't hear them.
Yeah.
So I think she's trying to tell her secret stuff. That's why they went in the pool.
Yeah, which makes sense. And she goes, I have a friend who's a psychiatrist who knows about the occult and these weird things. Like the school is once for, created by this, I wouldn't say gypsy woman, but an outcast of society that no one liked. And she built this school, and she dived heavily into the occult, essentially till like a witch hunt was done to her. And she died like 1912, so like 60 something years earlier.
Right.
And so he's, and that she's been talking to him about that. So it's like, hey, I had all these notes. I've been keeping notes on this school, all these weird occurrences that are going on here. And, I was going to, Pat had all the notes and she kept them and was going to show them to her psychiatrist friend who knows about the occult. And then Susie went into one of her sleeping spells because she just had her dinner and she's like trying to get her to wake up, I would say. And then she's like, she was going to show her, but she's passed out, and Sarah's going to find her notes. And we see that someone took all of them. And then she starts getting pursued. Just gloved hands.
Yes.
And she goes through a couple rooms, and she goes into like a storage room, and it has one of those lashes that just fall down. And the person pursuing her has a razor blade, like the old school shaving razor blades, and it's taking their sweet time just trying to push it up and push the bar up out of the way. There's enough room for a razor blade, those are thick blades on the old school shaving ones, right?
Well, yeah. Well, the whole thing was I think his wrist was like super weak.
Yeah.
So he was like, he's tapping the lock, but he couldn't
just gently tapping, like, hey,
couldn't get the force to open
for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it was a long time, unnecessarily long time.
Right. So, and then she goes, okay. And then she's like, I'm gonna stack these boxes, and then like that had to be a fluke. The boxes started to fall off. She was climbing them.
Well, again, and how long did it take her to stack the freaking boxes? I mean, like
another 5 minutes.
Yeah, and the guy's like, dink, dink, like still with the straight razor,
right,
like, trying to get in the whole time.
Right, his finger probably could have fit and lifted that.
Exactly, but it's like, I mean, how hard is it?
Yeah. And then she goes through this window and to another storage room, and she falls onto what just looks like a giant disheveled slinky.
Right.
But it's acting like it's razor wire. And it's like, but it's not cutting her. But she's trapped in it, entangled in it.
Right.
And she could have, I mean, yes, it was poorly lit, but yes, it was lit enough for us to see. Maybe it was supposed to be that dark she couldn't see what was there before she jumped into it. She could have seen it.
I don't know.
But yeah, she's entangled in that for like 5 minutes. Right. And then somehow through this other doorway, the killer comes in and slices her throat.
Right.
Yeah. So there's no more Sarah.
Right.
And then, and she, Susie gets out of her drunken slumber, essentially, her drug slumber.
Mm-hmm.
And like, Sarah's gone. Oh, she must have left in the middle of the night. Oh, well, let's carry on.
Yeah.
So then so yeah, who tells her? The head instructor is like, yeah, she's gone. Weird. And she's been talking about, and she's like talking to, Frank on the phone, which is probably the only phone in the building, and just like in the most inconspicuous spot, she's trying to talk to him about this stuff. And he's talking like, oh yeah, that's Marcos, this Greek immigrant. Marcos is 1901. That's it. It's like, we gotta meet and talk. So she drives and meets Frank. So we get introduced to a couple of new people at this point in time. It's like, yeah, I know all these stories about her, but you know what? You know more about this guy? Hey, you, come over here. Yes, I'm a professor of the occult. What do you know about the occult and witches? You know, um, and it has to be one. You know, what does she call the coven of witches? She called it something like a group of witches or something. He's like, no, 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 it's a coven. And you know, he gives like the important message of without the leader, they have no power, which I guess is in one way of looking at covens. Um, so
Well, I mean, I think it depends on the coven,
yes, absolutely,
but I mean, sure.
right. It's he's just very just the occult, everything occult. He knows everything occult,
Yeah, he's the occult guy.
right? You know, so she goes, you know, she's talking to Frank. He's like, oh yeah, she's my friend, but she used to be a former patient of mine, which is a weird thing, which I found very suspect at that point in time too.
Well, no, they were just explaining how they knew each other. They don't normally do that. Most movies just don't give you an explanation as to why these people know each other. They just do.
Yeah.
This movie is like actually attempting to give you some kind of background as to why this guy was involved.
Right. But when Susie comes back, you know, that everyone left to go to this ballet, but she wasn't invited. We told you. No, you didn't. She goes, okay. And then she's going to get her drug induced food coma that she has. And then she's like, huh, maybe maybe there's something in here. And then we get like the grossest dumping of food into a toilet.
Yeah, into a toilet, like it making the plop plop noises. Yeah, it was disgusting.
Yeah,
it was like some plain nasty, like looked like raw fish.
Yes,
and then like I don't know what
cream of wheat.
Yeah, it was like some kind of gruel or something. I don't know what it was.
And then she dumps the wine into the sink as opposed to the toilet, and then just stains the sink red.
Well, that was blood.
Yeah.
Wine does not do that. That was blood.
And it's probably been blood this entire time.
Correct.
She never looked at it.
Well, it's because she just drank it. She didn't bother pouring it out.
Yeah. And then she gets attacked by the world's crappiest fuzzball bat.
Dear God. That bat.
And after she, you know, gets rid of the bat, and then she goes like, huh. Oh, that's right. I have a superpower about footsteps.
No, Sarah did, and she wrote down all the numbers.
Yeah.
And told her about it when she was half asleep, and so now she remembers exactly what this code means, so she can follow it.
Oh, and then I forgot to mention that what Pat was mumbling when she left was all she caught was something about Secret and Iris. But yeah, then she does her superhuman strength and then starts following to the head mistress, the head instructor's footsteps.
The vice mistress.
Vice mistress.
Yeah.
And she follows her perfectly down lots of areas that she's never heard from her room.
Correct.
And then she goes into a room that's just pretty decorated, ornate, right? And then she sees flowers. And like, you have to push this certain blue flower, and it opens up a secret door. And then she continues to follow around the area until she finds them talking about her, and we hear like, okay, you know, we have to get rid of Susie. She's become a nuisance. We must get rid of her. We must kill her. And you see, you know, the vice mistress, you see the head instructor, you see like the groundskeeper, you see the cooks, you see the German boy all there. And then she's like, oh, she needs to get out of it. And she going through like these heavy curtains, finds a coffin with Sarah's body in it, just horribly mangled, I would say.
Fair.
Yeah. And then, you know, she starts getting she gets noticed, and she's hiding through these, I'd say, relatively see-through curtains, and like big gaping appearance that the guy can't find her. The servant that doesn't speak because he doesn't speak a language she knows.
Hungarian. He speaks Hungarian.
Yeah. And then eventually she finds herself in the bedroom, and she hears, we see that shadowy silhouette behind a curtain with the same heavy, raspy breathing. And she goes, okay, so, this is weird. And she's like, okay, I gotta get out of here. She knocks over some glass, a glass bird of some sort. And then she takes a piece of the broken glass and is like, okay, I need to kill this woman. She like has that recollection memory of kill the head of the coven, the rest will die. She opens the curtain, and then no one's there. And all of a sudden we have essentially a deadite Sarah come slowly after her. And like the room starts spinning, starts being windy, and then lightning flashes, and you can see that the person's just invisible. We can see the silhouette, stabs the witch, which is Marco's, and then essentially Sarah's corpse vanishes, and the school starts like exploding all around here, and fires start breaking out. So then she has to escape. She sees that like everyone that's part of the coven is now dead after she killed Marco, stabbing her. And then, the school starts imploding, and she escapes out back into the rain as the school is consumed by fire.
The end.
The end. So, I'll go first on my first thought. This is my first time seeing this that I can even recall. I know, I guess, the scenery and the coloring and stuff like that, because they have the red room, they have a yellow room in the dance school. And I thought this was a great movie. I don't know why. We probably didn't watch these growing up because they weren't on TV, and we really probably couldn't rent them from the video store. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I said, this very reminds me of, all the Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe movies, just the atmosphere, the ambiance, everything in place. And I thought it worked really, really well. Yes, we had like the same song over and over and over. But yeah, overall, like I said, I think this was a fantastic movie. I wish I didn't wait this long to watch it. What about you?
Yeah, this is my first time watching it as well. I had been aware of it for a long time.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, obviously I didn't really have the opportunity to watch it or rent it or anything. Or if I did, I didn't know what it was. I didn't have any idea. Well, it wasn't until I was an adult and getting into horror when people had mentioned it, and it's been on my list for a long time. Most of his movies have been on my list to watch for a long time. I just haven't gotten to the point because I knew like once I watched one, I would want to watch all of them in a row, and and I just haven't had a lot of time to do that. I don't wanted to research further, blah blah, whatever. So they've been on my list for a long time, but I just haven't got around to watching it. But yeah, watching it, you could really tell. In this movie, because most people say that this is probably his best movie, or one of his best. You're right. Yeah, we really see he's a master of his craft. He really is. Just the atmosphere that he built. Again, I was talking about just the use of color that he has. Stuff like that. Some of the acting is questionable, but the way that he presents it, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because the whole package is so good as it is that even some questionable acting is okay because the whole thing is still fantastic.
Yeah, and then we'll probably cover his remake at some point. Only one of his movies has been remade, and it's Suspiria. And it's like 40 years later.
Yeah, now that I have seen that one. The remake I had seen a while ago.
How close would you say it came to this? I haven't seen it.
The spirit of it is definitely there. I mean, exactly what they were trying to do, what the spirit of what he was trying to get across in this one is definitely there. The remake is a lot more focused on like the actual dancing part.
Okay.
Like there's a lot of like, performance dance. Like you can tell they were all a like dance troupe school, like all working on one, like show, or like traveling show, whatever it is. They were all working on that. And like, and this new student was coming in to be a part of that. And she was replacing like one of their best dancers. And they were like, oh, we don't think you're good enough. And then she had to like prove herself. So the dancing part of it was a lot bigger piece of it.
Yeah.
And then they probably went more into the whole occult aspect of it.
Like visually, visually though, how did it compare?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, the spirit of it is definitely there. I mean, like visually, atmospherically, yes, it was very, very similar.
Okay.
I mean, this same basic plot line happens.
Okay.
It's just again, it's just a little bit different of package. They focus on a little bit different of things. It's just it's a modern remake of an older movie. But,
okay.
It's great. Yeah, Dakota Johnson stars in it.
Yeah.
She is actually a good actress. If you only know her from 50 Shades of Grey,
that's
you
all.
Watch other movies that you should watch other movies that she's in because she is very, very good. There's the 50 Shades that doesn't speak well. I've never seen the 50 Shades, but I know how bad they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a lot of other movies that she did was good. Like what was it? A Night at the El Royale. She was great in. Peanut Butter Falcon. If you've ever seen that, she was great in that. So
you suggest watching the remake as well? It's a worthy remake.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you want to watch them in a row, but it's definitely a decent movie. I enjoyed it.
Okay, so either we'll get to it, or I'll just watch it on my own. I'll watch it though.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, what about highlights for you from Suspiria?
Highlights are I've already touched on it. It's basically just the the presentation, the whole. The cinematography, the use of color. I mean, just the the craft that is used to make this movie. Is just fantastic. It's just outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. That and for this coming 1977.
Yeah, right around there. Yeah.
I mean, we discussed this off pod. We'll discuss here. Just touch on it briefly that we weren't seeing this type of kills in America in 1977. We didn't get this until the 80s, I would say. Like that graphic. A lot of stuff was always off screen that we got, and we always saw the aftermath. But, yes, they were close-ups. Yes, we didn't see like the wide area shot of it. Yeah, some of them looked cheesy, but they were still pretty good effects, and that we didn't really see in American cinema, I would say, at that point in time. This was solely like an Italian thing, like the video nasties.
Yeah. Well, Italy, France. I mean, those cultures at that time saw it as an art form and just saw it as, it's just a different form of art. They didn't really bother them at all. They're used to like shocking art.
Yeah.
But just it was the more conservative stuff, which is, unfortunately the US and the UK were like very concerned with stuff like that. And, the US had, they were marking everything as X that was like, questionable,
Yep.
Even like Midnight Cowboy got labeled X, I mean, just because it had questionable things in it that they didn't want people to see. So they would just slap an X on it. So basically anybody that wanted to market to the US knew that they had to, pull punches in order to make it.
Up until the 80s, I'd say Friday the 13th showed a lot of gruesome kills. We'll have to find the first one that was able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, eventually they just started pushing the line, and it became fine. But it was a lot of the things. It was a lot of those movies that got those original X ratings that fought hard to get rid of them. And then once they did, it basically became a rule that like don't put X on these movies anymore.
Right.
So they didn't.
That's fair. Yeah, the highlights for me are definitely the same thing as yours. The art form, the cinematography, just the sets were just all part of the movie. They were just meticulously thought out and crafted perfectly, I'd say.
Yeah.
All right. I think I know what your low point is, but what's your low point? Low points.
Low points. There are two. I mean, one, obviously bugs. I don't like bugs. There's a lot of them. They're gross. They're like real bugs. There's people like stepping on them. They were everywhere. It was disgusting. And that bat. That bat was like the worst bat thing I've ever seen. The only good part about that bat is like she eventually like put a towel over it and it fell on the ground, and then she like beat it to death with like a piece of wood under the towel, and that was kind of brutal because like the blood was like soaking through the towel, which was interesting. But the actual bat itself was ridiculously fake and very stupid looking.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I warned you. I'm like, we watched this at the same time, separately, obviously, but I was a little bit ahead of you. I'm like, all right, we should be warned. This is your bug alert. I saw it, I'm like, oh, Salem's not going to like this.
Yeah, then when you said that, I paused it. I went up and got another drink. I was like, all right, gotta get loaded up for this.
Yeah, like I said, that I mean, bugs don't really bother me. So that's not that. The bat, though, yeah, that bat was pretty bad. Like everything else, they skimped on the bat. It feels like.
Right. Yeah, it's like I don't know why that. Again, I don't even know that bat scene was even there. Like it didn't do anything. I don't understand what that bat scene was about.
Right. As far as we're aware, the bat wasn't controlled by Coven. So
right, she beat it to death with a stick, and then it was over. It was
right.
Like it didn't mean anything. It didn't do anything. I don't understand why it was even there. But whatever.
And I'll go with Hans as well. Hans was
Hans.
Hans. Yes, Hans.
Yeah. The actual dancing that they were doing was ridiculously bad.
That too. Like I said, I'm no dance expert, but I know when my kids were 4 in dance class, they had more structure than that class.
Right.
So, all right. So for this episode, we are doing number of eye gouges out of 10 because Italian filmmakers seem to have a tendency to show us eye stuff.
Yeah, stuff going into eyes being crushed, eyes being squished. Yes, there's a lot. Yes,
eyes pulled out. Yes, absolutely,
yes, a lot.
So yeah, I'll go first. Eye gouges out of 10. I said this movie really surprised me. Just that bat really just marked it down, but I'm gonna go to probably 8.5, just because of the atmosphere and stuff like that. Like I felt it was really, really good. There's, like I said, the bat could have been better. Just some of the acting could have been better, obviously, but overall, fantastic. What about you?
Yeah, I was also gonna give it 8.5 eye gouges out of 10.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just great overall. I mean, again, 7 is my line for rewatches. I would definitely rewatch this movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie. It's now probably going to go in the rotation at some point. But yeah, so now I'm excited to watch even more of his movies after this.
Oh yeah, yep. I'm excited. Just stuff that we haven't seen that's old, and this is why we do this podcast, is to go back and have reasons to watch these movies,
right?
That we missed out on, especially stuff like this. I really, really did. All right. Why don't you bring us into our next movie then?
Our next movie is Tenebrae. Some people say Tenebrae or whatever. It is not an English word.
No.
The word, it translates to like darkness or shadows. But they went with Tenebrae. So essentially, it opens up to like a strange kind of narration of a guy reading, or I should say, a being reading from a book, right?
Yes. Yep.
And then as reads from the book, and then we find out that somebody got killed, and then this book is stuffed in her mouth. Is that this one? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So pages from the book are stuffed in this woman's mouth, and then her throat is like cut with a razor.
Yes.
And anyway, and then that's kind of the intro to the movie, and then we go to a guy on a plane, and the guy is the writer of the book. The
Peter.
book, yeah, Peter, and the book is called Tenebrae. But he's like a horror mystery writer. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it sounds like he's more like a mystery type thing, like a detective kind of novel, but with like a horror bent on it. Is what it sounds like his kind of genre is.
It would make sense because of what they discuss and who he compares his writings to.
Right.
Yeah.
So essentially, he's an American writer, and he's going to Rome for a press tour, like a book signing tour kind of thing. So he gets to Rome. His agent is John Saxon.
I mean, it wouldn't be the 80s without John Saxon.
Right. Yeah, so, it's odd seeing John Saxon in a not cop role.
I thought for sure he was a cop. He's a cop.
He's usually a cop or some kind of like tough guy. And this is a very rare movie where he's not either of those things.
Yes.
He does not fight at all in this movie, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so his agent is John Saxon. He's basically telling him that, he's been like the number one writer here for like 12 weeks. Everybody loves him. So we're going to go on this press tour, right? So he gets home. There's police already in his new apartment.
Yeah.
And the police are there to question him because obviously this person that was killed, like it was pages from his book stuffed in her mouth, and she was killed in the same way that the character in the book was killed.
Yes.
So they're like, oh, okay, well, we gotta, interview you. And he's like, well, obviously it wasn't me because I was on a plane, right? Like I couldn't have done it, And they're like, yeah, yes. We know, but we still have to interview you anyway. So interviewing him, they don't really get a whole lot of information. He just basically learns that somebody kills them, using his book as a template.
Yep.
So he goes to like this press junket kind of thing. There's this woman who like very oddly like tries attacking him, just for the time period, I think is what makes it so odd. As she attacks him, like, don't you think your book is sexist? Like all the victims are women. Like, don't you think that's degrading women? I thought that was just odd for like, what was it, 82? This movie came out.
Right. But she also goes, she's like, you know me, that's not how I am. That's just what happens in the book.
Right.
Like, get over it.
Right. Well, and then the funny thing, the funny thing is like once like she turns the business off, they're buddies.
Right.
They're like friends. And she's like, oh, haha, like we should go have dinner and stuff. And it's just very odd. Like she's like hot and cold like that.
Yes, absolutely.
But anyway, so he basically goes, okay, yeah, we'll meet up, at some point in time, in the future, that kind of stuff. And there's some scenes where he's like working with his secretary who then comes to Rome to help him, because he's got ideas he wants to write down. So he needs a typewriter. He kind of seems like a prima donna kind of person, right?
Very convoluted,
right?
Self-indulgent,
right? So he goes on this talk show with like this guy, and the talk show is supposed to be like a kind of light, like a what do you call it? Like an Ellen or like a Kelly Clarkson type of show. It's like a light show, right? They're not supposed to do the heavy hitting questions. And this guy in like the green room conversation is hitting him with like heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so it sounds like you want to kill perverts in your book. Like, he's like, whoa, where are you getting this from? Like, what are you talking about? I mean, just like heavy handed stuff. And he's like, is this normally what you talk about? He's like, no, this is just my own personal questions.
Yeah.
We'll talk about something else later.
They talk about the perversions of humanity a lot.
Right. Yeah. So he's like, okay, that's odd. So they go off, they do the show, and the show is normal. They don't ask any weird questions like that. And then afterwards, the woman that accused him of being sexist has a weird relationship with her roommate / girlfriend.
Yes.
And so
they talk about the Latin lesbo.
Yeah. Well, that's later on. But right now it's like, they're obviously like they're in a bar together. Or no, they're in like a pool hall or something. Anyway, there's a guy playing like video games that her girlfriend is attracted to. So she like invites this guy to come back to her house. And the funny thing is like she is like incapable of keeping her nipples in this dress. They're
absolutely
just flopping out. And like every time she takes a step, they're just out.
Well,
I mean,
in
hey,
fairness,
good for you. It is Italy, I guess. They are a little bit more open there. Maybe that's the normal thing. I don't know. It just
in
struck me
fairness,
as-
later on, we see her that she doesn't know how to hold a towel over herself.
That's correct. That's what I'm saying. Like she does the same thing there. So I don't know. Maybe she like
how do I hold this towel? I just hold it down the middle of me, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's anyway. It's odd. But anyway, so she like brings this guy home and she says, "Oh yeah, don't bother coming home. You know, I'm going to be, busy for an hour or whatever."
Right.
So she comes home after an hour and her room, she is just pissed off at her roommate. And it's obvious that like they're in a relationship, but they obviously had some kind of conversation about being in an open relationship. But she, even though allows it to happen because she knows she said it was okay, is still very, very upset that it's happening.
Calls her a whore.
Yeah. So they're fighting back and forth, and it's just, not a good situation. I don't know. Again, it's kind of progressive, but again, this is in Italy, right?
Yeah.
Italy and France and those, they're a little bit further up the ladder of, sexual openness than we are. So in 82, they're dealing with stuff that we're dealing with now. Right. Yeah. So essentially, they get in a fight. She goes in her room, closes the door, gets angry.
Blast music.
Yeah, blast music. Well, the one upstairs is blast the music, whatever. And then she essentially gets attacked. The one who was...
Well, first we have a 10-minute scene where we go around to every window of that house playing.
Well, yeah, there's a lot, yes. But, yeah, essentially she gets attacked and killed by the same killer, obviously. And this killer poses her to be like just like the death in one of the books and it's taking pictures and stuff. Like obviously this is like a staged kind of thing.
Right.
And he goes and he kills the other roommate as well. Also poses her, takes pictures and all that kind of stuff. And then I forgot to mention that the cops received a letter for our author guy, Peter.
Yeah.
That was like, it's typed up in like a ransom note, cut out letters, like pasted to a piece of paper. And it was like a line from his book. So like, they're showing that like, this is the guy who committed the crime and he's doing it for you because he knows you're here.
Yes.
And then, so the second one, these two deaths, he gets another thing in the mail, but this one isn't a line from his book. This one is, like you said, it's something about lesbos and like punishing,
the perversions
or something.
Yeah.
So essentially at this point, the guy goes, okay, this sounds exactly like that dude that was interviewing me. Right. And so he's got this like little helper driver guy.
Yeah.
Who's like 17 or something.
Comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. And he's like, okay, you're coming with me. We're going to go to this guy's house and we're going to check it out. And they're like, he's like, okay. So they go to the guy's house. They're like checking it out. And as the one dude, or no, hold on. Does the girl happen before this?
Yes. With the most athletic dog I've ever seen.
Yes. Yeah. So the girl scene happens right before, because okay. So the girl scene happens right before this. There's a girl who's like the landlord's daughter.
Yeah. Yes.
Who's also like 17.
Yes.
As we're introduced to her, she fixes a light switch or something that we're kind of introduced to. But
Peter seems to be flirting with her.
Yeah, it was odd.
Yeah. She does something, but she essentially like finds the killer's lair.
Well, leading up to that,
most athletic dog.
Right? Yeah, she walks past this dog who's like, it's like a Doberman and it's barking, and it's behind like a 10-foot fence. It's a huge fence.
Yes.
And she's like going up to, I don't know what she was trying to even do to it, like trying to talk to it or bark back. I don't know what she's doing. Anyway, the dog jumps this 10-foot fence.
Climbs it, yeah.
Yeah, and it climbs it and jumps it and chases it. There's this extended chase sequence where she's jumping multiple fences and, I mean, going all over the place. She gets bit several times. She's, like, bleeding. She has this leg wound that sometimes is there and sometimes it's not. Like, sometimes she's limping, sometimes she's running fine. It's all over the place. Anyway, so she basically gets into the killer's lair.
On accident.
And even though she's like, the landlord's daughter of the writer's landlord. I mean, it's extreme coincidence, but whatever. So she goes into the lair and she finds all these like pictures
like dark room.
Yeah. Pictures of the death, of the bodies and all these like, pages of the book that have been like cut out and like categorized and dissected with notes all over. And so she's like taking the stuff and like stuffing it in her pockets. And then she tries to go out like the back door, which ends up going to this, like, I don't know if it's supposed to be like a living room, like a jungle living room. I don't know what it is.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's bizarre. It's some kind of bizarre Italian home design that I don't get. She goes up there, and then essentially, a person is there and the person kills her, chases her out into the yard and then kills her. And then the next morning we get a weird scene of somebody mowing the lawn.
Yes.
Around her body and then like, mowing over all the pictures and notes and stuff that she stole that was all over the ground. Anyway, then we cut to the guy saying, hey, I know this guy. Let's go to this guy's house, bring in the 17-year-old kid with him. They go there. And this is obviously, we as the audience know, this is the same living room that the girl was in, the weird jungle living room.
Yeah.
And we see the guy who's the host of the show, like, the kid, the 17-year-old kid goes around and sees this dude and he's like got notes in his hand. Like he's obviously the guy now, right? Like he can obviously see that it's him. And then he gets attacked.
Yep.
Not the kid, but the guy gets attacked.
With an axe.
Yeah. With an axe, with the killer, right? Yeah, and then he gets killed with the axe. Like something flies through the window and breaks the window. The kid like has like a mental break or something, and runs away. And then he goes back to where Peter was, and Peter is like, has this head wound, and there's like a bloody rock nearby, and he's like, oh, I got hit in the head with the rock. It must have been the killer. That's how he must have slipped past me and got to you. That's how he got it. So they like escape and leave.
Yeah. Yeah, he starts cleaning it up and it's like massive head wound, like even blood coming from the gun that's front of his face.
Right.
Like about head trauma. You should go see someone. No, I don't remember anything, but I think I'm fine.
Yeah, and he just puts a Band-Aid on his bald spot and then he's fine. Like that Band-Aid is there for the rest of the movie. But
yes.
but now he's totally fine. So at this point, the police, thought or had suspected that this guy was the killer, but now is like, well, he can't be, right? Because he was killed by the killer. Because now there's, two witnesses kind of saying that it was him.
Yeah. Okay. And then, I think this is where John Saxon is waiting for someone in the square.
Right. Well, before this, like he goes to his agent, basically saying like, I need to get out of here.
I need to leave. I need to go back.
Like I need to go somewhere. I need to go back home. Like there's too much going on. Like this is, too much happening. There's obviously a killer still out there. Like I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
And Jack Saxon's like, oh, just, okay, I'll send you to like this villa in the middle of nowhere and I'll tell everybody you left.
Yeah.
Because he needed him to do something in a few days, some kind of press thing, whatever it is. And he's like, oh, okay, fine. Well, I'll decide later, but I'll go home now. And then after he leaves, somebody comes out like from the closet and is essentially Peter's ex-wife is Jane, who like up until this point had kind of been alluding that she was like being around, like somebody messed with his luggage and like messed up all the stuff in his luggage. And it was like suspected that it was this Jane person.
Yeah.
But we had not met her.
Very mad at him. At Peter.
Right. Yeah. They're like ex-wife. They don't get along, whatever. So it was like, suspected that, Jane was there, but now we know that she is actually in Rome. And then we find out that she is like with John Saxon.
I mean, who wouldn't be?
Well, yeah. I mean, but yeah, they're like an item and
I know.
He doesn't want to tell Peter about it. So he's trying to keep it secret. So that's why she was hiding in the closet, whatever.
Right.
And then right around this point is where, John Saxon is waiting for her in the park or in this like square, whatever,
in broad daylight.
In broad daylight, yeah. And then like we get like the POV kind of the killer who runs up and like stabs him a bunch of times.
Yep.
Then he dies, and then it goes. And then at this point, I'm trying to think. Oh, they find out that Jane is actually in Rome because I believe she calls Anne the secretary.
Yes.
And she calls Anne the secretary saying that she needs help. What's going on. So she decides that Anne is going to go over there and check on him, or check on her. Sorry. So she goes over to check on her. I guess the police also found out that Jane is in town, and they suspect her of being the killer because, she's trying to get back at Peter.
Right.
So the police are also on their way there. So basically, the killer is lurking in this apartment. And Jane, this is like probably one of the best scenes of the movie, I would say, is like Jane is like sitting there waiting in her apartment. And then somebody comes down and chops her arm off on this table, and she like gets up and it just sprays this arc of blood all over the wall behind her. But it's done really well. Like it's like an artistic move almost.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then she like, basically gets stabbed to death in the kitchen. And the killer lurks around in the apartment, and then another woman comes in, and she gets an axe to the neck.
Yep.
And then it's like the killer at that point, rolls the body over and realizes it's the cop lady.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming they thought it was Anne, who was the secretary going to get Jane, but it actually turns out to be the cop lady who was the two cops. There was a guy and a girl. They were partners, the detectives, whatever. So it was the lady cop that had come in by herself, apparently. And she got an axe to the neck. And then at that point, the other dude cop comes in, and then Anne comes in behind him, screaming because there's, blood and guts and everything. But anyway, she's screaming because she sees who the killer is, and it's actually Peter.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right. So in a bizarre twist, I mean, usually you don't get this twisty with like these kind of movies. So obviously he couldn't have done the first kill because he was on a plane when it happened.
Yep.
So what it is the first three kills are by that creepy TV guy who is asking him the weird perversion questions.
Yep.
And so he killed that guy instead of telling the police what was happening because they basically found enough evidence to convict him.
Yeah.
He kills him and then starts killing off people that are threatening him. So he kind of like has his own mental break when he kills him and then becomes the killer himself.
Because we find out that he was like humiliated as a kid and went through mentally tormented. And so, like, I think he killed her.
Yeah,
and it was never caught. There was there's no trial or anything like that. And then, like, seeing these murders based off his work, like, snapped his memory back to that murderous rampage.
Right. Yeah, and then put him back in the mind of a murderer.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then essentially the end. Or except the weird fantasy thing that he had. I don't know. Again, I don't know if this is real or not because this is like his killer mind. It was like this like attractive woman goes into the like on the beach with like 4 men, okay? And she's obviously like attempting to like seduce all of these men at the same time. And essentially picks 3 of the men to like seduce, and then the one man she says no to, like literally gives a thumbs down to.
Yes.
And then he gets upset, and then he comes back to try to like, I guess take her by force. I'm guessing. I don't know. He came up and slapped
something like
her.
that. Yeah.
And of course the 3 other guys were not happy about that, so they beat the crap out of him.
Right.
And I'm assuming then they probably went off to have their, love party, orgy, whatever they're doing. But then later on, when he was stalking the woman until she was alone at some point, and then he crept out and stabbed her to death.
Yes.
But this was all POV stuff. We had no idea who this was or why these scenes were being shown. But
right. Well, then we have Well, that's not the end of the movie. Then we have another twist to come. The cop, when his secretary and the cop surround him, he cuts his own throat.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so he cuts his own throat, and they're like, "Oh, he's dead," and so they all leave him there on the ground alone. Yep. Of course. Yep. So they're going outside, like trying to call backup or whatever, and then when they go back in, he's gone.
Yeah.
And there's like, basically he picks up the straight razor and he finds a button on the handle. He pushes the button and like blood squirts out of the blade. So yeah, and the blade is dull. So they find out that he faked like his own death to get away from them.
Yeah, and then the cop gets murdered, and his secretary comes back, and like he's fighting with the cop, and like this weird ass metal sculptor blocks the door, and he's like sitting there crouched with the axe, waiting for Anne to come in. And as she bursts open the door, he gets just pinned by that metal. Like somehow that 2 foot falls enough to like pin him to the wall. It's like a big spike in the gut and then into the wall. And then his secretary just screams. The movie ends.
Yeah, she does that a lot.
Yes, she does. End of movie.
End of movie.
So what are your first thoughts on this?
Again, I liked it a lot. I mean, because it's like, it's like a murder mystery kind of thing, right? It's like a whodunit.
Right.
And you're trying to figure it out, and it keeps taking turns, and obviously at the end you realize why, because things are changing behind the scenes while the things are progressing. So it's kind of impossible for you to pick what's happening.
Correct.
Again, everybody, you're always assuming there's going to be one killer that's doing all this, right? Because they're all similar kills.
Right.
But the twist.
Multiple killers.
Is that there's more than one,
which is interesting. I don't know if that's been done before in a horror movie.
Well, in horror, probably not. But I mean, before this, we had all the noir movies, and noir movies always had all kinds of twists and turns and stuff. So
yeah.
I mean, those are I'm sure those plot lines are done, but yeah, this is brought into that but I guess it's part of the whole film genre, like that giallo film genre, which is like an Italian film genre, which is it's kind of like a murder mystery whodunit, but it has very close ties with horror, to where they're often the same thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I see then we have the line from this movie that we used for the title of this episode, "Eliminate the Impossible," because he got that. I think it better than I do, right?
Well, yeah, it's from The Hound of the Baskervilles, which is one of the Sherlock Holmes album, and the line is eliminate the impossible, and then whatever is left, however improbable, must be the truth.
Right.
Meaning you just have to kind of knock out everything that is impossible, that can't be real, and then whatever is left is what is the truth.
Right. And so, I mean, that being said, that it was impossible for him to be the first killer.
Correct.
Because he physically was not there.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, how do you think this holds up as your first thought? And we watched these in a row in comparison to, say, Suspiria. Different type of movie, obviously.
Yeah, it's a different type of movie. I mean, obviously the that kind of like supernatural undertone isn't there.
Right.
And this one, it's just more of like a pure, kind of slasher, like
human slasher.
Human killer on the loose. Obviously, unhinged in some way, because they're like staging murders and taking pictures and staging it after a book. So I mean, obviously, it's some kind of like serial killer type person. But again, it's not supernatural. So whereas Suspiria is very heavily, supernatural.
Yes.
But I would say other than that, I mean, it's, very similar filmmaking. You can obviously tell that Argento made this, because it's very similar atmospherically to Suspiria.
Oh, absolutely.
Just not as many. I mean, I would say the use of color is not as heavy in this, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a fantastic movie. I liked it a lot. I probably liked it better than Suspiria, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It is more of a whodunit with a couple of twists that you never expect. And it's something we were discussing too, was this the first type of movie that had this plot line of someone killing people based off of someone else's work. We'd have to do research onto that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't think of one, but again,
No.
I haven't seen everything. So I mean, obviously there might be something. I'm sure there's something before this
Right.
that was
but we have
similar,
but we have seen this after it. We know that.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if this was the tent pole for that or was done the best. Something we definitely need to look into. Because I'm interested because I like that stuff. That goes into the ties of, how, the nature of human perversion is how graphic can books get, like Stephen King, or Clive Barker, stuff like that, and then have someone copycat essentially that stuff. I mean, it's especially in the 80s in America, obviously we were at that point in horror movies where people are like, okay, you're going to give people ideas, right? That was always a major concern of horror movies, is like you're giving serial killers ideas.
Yeah, I mean, they don't need ideas.
No.
That's the thing. I mean, it doesn't matter if they have ideas. I mean, if people are going to kill people, they're going to kill people. I mean, it doesn't matter if they have flair about it or not. They're still bad.
Right. And I think that was kind of the message in this movie, I would say, is that it doesn't matter. They just happen to be killing off of this guy's book.
Right.
And like I said, I'd say the mid 80s, 90s that we saw people really concerned about that. And we know it's not the case.
Correct.
So I'd say once again that they were talking about this stuff that we weren't really thinking about in America. You know what I mean? Like Stephen King was known, but I don't think Stephen King was accused of stuff of that idea at that point in time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I gotcha.
So, yeah, I mean, my first thoughts, yeah, it was definitely different than Suspiria, which is good. You don't want every movie to be exactly the same. And it was a good take on the human slasher, and with a couple of twists thrown into there, I thought it was really good for that. Obviously, we have the first, Friday the 13th is already out at this point in time. We had number 3 out by this point in time as well. But the human killer was a thing. We don't really get the supernatural killer, really, especially the POV, until 1978 Halloween, as a slasher. Let me clarify that. We have supernatural stuff, obviously, in other movies before that. But no, I think this is a great take on it, and just, a well-crafted thought, and everything once again felt very purposeful in how everything was done. Like you said, with the blood splatter from the arm when her arm got chopped off.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like everything is very artistic. Everything has a very artistic bend on it. Even somebody getting their arm chopped off and then spraying blood on a wall is like done in a very art way,
Yeah, yeah. What about highlights for you?
Highlights for this movie, number 1 is the music.
Yes.
The music on this is fantastic. I actually looked up like who it was. Like the title one is done by a band called Goblin.
Yeah.
Who apparently had broken up before the movie came out, and Argento convinced them to get back together to film this song for his movie.
Now, didn't they also do the music in Suspiria?
They've done several other films of his,
yes.
They're like common collaborators. But yeah, and it's just fantastic. And the interesting thing is like when the movie is first opening up, I'm like, I know I've never seen this movie before, but I heard the song before.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, where did I hear this from? And it took me a while to figure it out. But the band Justice, if you've ever heard of them, they're like a French electronic-y group.
Yeah.
They remixed the song, and it's not very remixed. Like you can tell, it's obviously that song. Obviously they remixed it in a more modern way, put a more modern beat on it, but that's what it was. I had listened to that album a lot of times, and that song, I was like, oh man, I know this from somewhere, but I had to look it up. But yeah, no, it's fantastic. The music from them in this movie is great, and there's a lot of scenes of them playing music, like you said a little bit earlier with the
the same song.
The one roommate was playing it super loud, and there's like a long scene of
10 minutes of
looking all around, while the whole song plays in its entirety.
Yes, they do tend to play all the songs in all their entirety.
Right. And it sounds great. It's fantastic. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, and they're definitely prog rock, very synth heavy stuff, which I know you like.
Yes, I do.
And it reminded me of when they redid the Friday the 13th soundtrack for number 4, that did the prog rock version of it. It reminded me a lot like that. But yeah, they did a lot of collaboration. I just looked up a lot of collaborations. They even did the soundtrack for Romero's Dawn of the Dead in Europe.
Nice.
So yeah, they were definitely the people to that. Yeah. Any other highlights?
No, I mean, obviously the whole movie in general, I liked a lot, but I'd say specifically, I really liked the music.
Yeah. Yeah, highlights definitely, I think they did POV really, really well for it. Yeah, there was very artistic stuff, like I said, going around the whole building. But yeah, the music and even the acting was better than Suspiria.
Yeah.
I would say.
No, that's fair.
Especially John Saxon, of course. Right.
Right. Like I said, who doesn't fight in this movie? He's not a cop. He's not a strong guy. He literally gets just stabbed. He's just like a book agent, and then just gets stabbed and dies. I mean, it's a very odd John Saxon role. But
they underutilized John Saxon. Let's go with that.
That's correct.
What about low points for you?
Low points in this movie, I got to call out the one lady who was his friend with the whole how you're sexist with your book.
Yeah,
she was a terrible actress. I don't know what it is, but she was so annoying. Everybody else in the movie was 10 times better than she was. And I don't know. Just the way that she presented, the way that she acted, it was very bad, and I did not like it at all.
Yeah. The low point for me is Super Dog.
No, you don't think Dog can jump a fence like that?
I mean, you do see dogs climb chain link fences. That is a thing, and this dog clearly did it. But I mean, that was an insane amount of chasing for that dog to do continuously, and a lot of fences just not to give up, and then eventually gives up when she gets them out.
Right? Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, as soon as she that he's not needed for the plot device anymore, he's gone. But
wholeheartedly plot device dog.
Yeah.
I just didn't like that, the plot device dog.
That's fair.
All right, so how many eye gouges out of 10 are you giving this movie?
I will give this movie 9 eye gouges out of 10.
9?
Yes. Nice. I liked it just a teeny bit more than Suspiria.
Yeah, I liked it more than Suspiria. No, I think I liked them just equally. Just for different reasons. So I'm going to 8.5 as well. It's just a different type of movie. I guess I think. Do you think it'd been better? What made it a perfect 10? Just that woman not being there, or the fact that you weren't able to see all these twists, they were never led up to these things.
That's okay. I mean, it's not a movie that is forcing you to try to think about who the killer is. And then doesn't insult you at the end by how could you not know that? Some movies do that stuff, and it annoys me. But no, it doesn't do anything like that. I mean, honestly, it's probably just because it's a little dated. If it was, a little more modernized, I guess, I might give it a higher note. But it's fantastic. It's a great movie. It's just not perfect.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So yes, so we're going to go and then into demons, demone, yeah. And we're honestly with demons 1 and 2 would probably be a lot briefer than the recaps, just because there's not a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but these movies, to be fair, don't have a whole lot of plot happening. It's just kind of like a vehicle to show you interesting things, and then that's it.
Yes. So, so these were not directed by Argento, but he helped write the screenplay and he produced them. So that's where we included them. And these are kind of big name still stuff in the Argento category, as I said earlier. And these are the first ones to really be all English, I'd say, right? Even though they're still shot in Italy. Most of them are. Most of the people, more people are speaking English natively in these.
Yes.
Let's go with that. So, kind of like in the same Berlin area, Germany, Italian area that we meet Cheryl, and she's meeting up with I guess she's by herself on the subway, and like a guy with like a half metal theater mask, I would call it, kind of just stares at her.
He's like I call him Mr. Cyberpunk.
Mr. Cyberpunk, like half Doctor Doom.
I mean, because he's seriously like he looks like he was like living the cyberpunk lifestyle.
Yes. So yeah, he just kind of like follows her around a little bit and not saying anything, and he like hands her a ticket to like a movie theater. Oh, okay. She's like, oh, this seems cool. Can I have one for my friend? And she gets another one for Metropole, however you want to say that. Metropole.
I don't know. I have no idea. It's Metropole is how it's spelled, but I don't know.
Yeah,
without the E, so Metropole.
Yeah. And she talks about her friend. He's like, hey, do you want to go to this? It's free tickets. We can go see movies. As long as it's not a horror movie. I don't like horror movies.
Wah, wah.
Right. And then, so they go, it's like freshly renovated theater, I would say.
Yeah. It's like basically one of those, like, it's like an old school, like, Art Deco theater, but it's like, remodeled to be modern.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then we get into, the entry, and we get to meet what I'd call our cast of characters. They meet up with two college boys, I guess, George and George's friend, I'll call him. I don't remember his name.
Yeah, I don't know. Two guys.
Yeah, and we meet a blind guy with his daughter who helps kind of be his guide.
Who I swear was Henry Dean Stanton.
Really?
It looks just like him. It's not him. But it looks, I think it's with his glasses on. He looks just like Henry Dean Stanton.
I looked back to see if it was the same blind guy from Suspiria.
No, it wasn't him. It was different. It was an older dude. But like I said, he looks like Henry Dean Stanton with blue blockers on.
There you go. Yeah. Ginormous glasses.
Right.
A married couple, I guess a boyfriend, girlfriend, and then we meet a pimp with like the greatest sideburns into goatee, like not a beard, bald, but with like thick sideburns. And I guess he's a pimp with his two worker ladies.
Well, I mean, don't put a label on him, man. You don't know what he is.
Yeah.
He is a guy that is going on a date with two women to a movie theater.
There you go.
But he treats them as if they are his property and not his friends. How about that?
There you go. And they have a motorcycle in the lobby, and they have a weird mask.
Yeah, it's like an Oni mask.
Yeah, but metal
and a samurai sword, right?
Yeah, and samurai sword and a motorcycle or dirt bike. I don't know. I'll question the motorcycle later on in the movie. And Goretta, she plays one of the lady friends, and she's like touches her face to it, puts it on, and she gets like a scratch on her face.
Correct.
That just doesn't seem to like stop bleeding, but not bleeding. It's just like a weird scratch at this point in time.
Yeah, it's just like a little nick. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we go into the movie theater, and like George is next to Cheryl, and they don't know each other. He's like, if you get scared, you can hold my hand or put your arms around me or whatever, right? And they start showing, then they start playing the movie inside the movie. And the movie is about a group of people that are discovering like two old tombs in a graveyard. Like this is, about Nostradamus, right? And, like, oh, they find Nostradamus's grave somehow. It starts in English letters spells out Nostradamus, which it would not. 16th century Italy. Have English on there.
Correct, but
and people are very upset by this movie. It seems to be like very violent, but like people start making out during this movie. People are getting felt up while watching this movie, and the theater's maybe 20 people in there, and then like on the balcony is the blind man and his daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say that they find in the movie, so people, like I said, watching this, people are getting a little upset, and their friends like, I knew this was a horror movie, I don't like it. And they open up like Nostradamus' grave, and they find a book and a mask, which is identical to the mask that was in the lobby.
Yeah, only it looks older in the movie, right?
Right. Yeah. And they talked about like, and some person in the movie gets a scratch. Like, this isn't healing, just like yours isn't. And Greta's character's like, huh, that's weird. And then the guy that gets scratched eventually turns into a demon and then kills his friends.
Right.
In the movie.
Yeah, and then she goes, "Oh, I should check my cheek." And then her cheek it's now bigger and bleeding.
Yeah, Greta's character goes into the bathroom, which, and those have to be European toilets because those toilets do not look comfortable to sit on. And
I wasn't looking at the toilets.
Well, they had like no seats. It's just a big bowl with nothing there. And so like she's looking at her cheek, and then we start to see the first use of bladder effects in one of these movies for Argento, right? Like her cheek kind of like pusses up in like bladder effects and just starts bleeding out like goo. And then
first it explodes like a big zit.
Yeah.
And then it just starts spewing like green goo out.
Right. And then she starts transforming, like her nails grow out of her fingernails. You see her teeth getting pushed out with like fangs instead. And she turns essentially into one of the demons that we saw in the movie that they're watching. Now the other lady friend of the gentleman, is like, oh, she's been gone a while. I need to go check on her. He's like, don't you disappear too. And when she finds her in the bathroom, and then she gets slashed on the neck and face. Yeah, she has like these razor sharp fingernails, claws essentially. And then she starts getting chased by her through the theater, and somehow she ends up behind the screen, and she's like pounding on it, and people are like starting to notice, like, hey, there's someone behind there. And then she eventually bursts through the screen and then changes into a demon right in front of him and starts attacking people. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then at this point, it's just kind of like
chaos.
Yeah. There's like the blind guy. I don't understand why a blind guy would go to a movie. But anyway, So the blind guy goes to a movie, but not only is he just, if he's there for the experience, whatever, that's fine. But no, he goes there and he's like asking his daughter to like describe to him what's happening.
Yeah.
Which is odd. But then she, like, some random dude comes and sits next to her, and then all of a sudden the next scene she's like making out with this dude. And like
he looks like the landlord from Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Yeah, he looks like a scumbag.
And then Greg's character like starts strangling him with a rope while they're making out.
Right. And then like for some reason they're like their faces are stuck together.
Yes.
And they're still making out. Bleeding out of their mouths. I don't understand what was happening there, but
yeah.
Yes, that happened.
And then they kind of get hung and then thrown over, I'd say, the balcony down below.
Well, yeah, from this point, the movie just basically becomes a showcase for demon kills
Yes,
for like
absolutely.
probably at least the next 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But they tried to. The people start panicking, as you probably would, and try to go out. And they rip the doors off, and they realize it's been cinder blocked in.
Right.
While they were watching the movie. Right?
Correct.
So they tore down the door frames and it's just a brick wall. So then they're trying to figure out, okay, how the hell do we get out of here? So they can't do it, so they go back into the balcony because okay, nothing can get to us in the balcony if we barricade it. And I don't know his name, but the gentleman starts, all right, just rip up the chairs and put it in front of the doors. They could do this is how you do it. And so it's ripping up rows of chairs to blockade. Poorly, I would say.
Right. Yeah. And then he's like, oh, we got to make sure we watch the balcony. We got to cut this rope. And then as he says that,
he gets attacked.
Yeah, the guy comes up and he gets attacked. Yeah, it's goofy. Like I said, there's just attacks.
Yeah. And then they haphazardly just slap the wall next to them in the balcony with whatever they can find. Some of them are hitting them hard with fire extinguishers. Other ones are just slapping them with pizza trays.
Right.
I'm like, okay, that's not doing anything. They found that, oh, there's this other room here. And they, six people go off into the other room. And then, while demons are trying to get in there. And then while that's happening, then we get introduced to some, let's call them punks.
Well, in the 80s, this is what punks were.
I know.
Okay, this is second wave punk. This is not first wave punk. This is second wave punk. This is reality accurate.
Yeah. And they're just driving around snorting cocaine out of a Coke can.
What was the driver's name?
Oh, I don't remember.
Ripper.
Ripper. Yes.
His name was Ripper.
Yeah. So they're doing coke out of a Coke can, which is just funny. And then we just driving. They sold this car. They're just joyriding. This car's a piece of crap. They're trying to find another one. Then you get this scene where, the only lady punk in there spills coke all over herself and then cleaning it up. And then the guy next to her starts doing the coke off of her chest with a razor blade, scraping it up. And she's really enjoying it. And then he cuts her boob with it. And then she's like, okay, there's something wrong with you. Stop. And then they find another car that they're going to hotwire. And then the cops show up.
Mm-hmm.
And they start getting chased by the cops. And they end up by the theater. And the door, they're trying to pound the door and they can't open it. The door magically opens. You see something scamper out. And as they go in, and then you see it was the blind guy that scampers out and then attacks. He's now a demon, kills the cops, and they become demons. And while the other people are escaping, people are getting transformed into demons. Let's call them now down to 4 main characters. No, there's 6, right? At this point, they run into Greta, and they had blockaded her off. They just manhandled a vending machine to block her into this room.
Right.
And then, like I said, they're just trying to find ways to escape. And, then they're just crawling around. They're barricaded a lot while other people are getting killed by demons and transforming all around them. The punks come in. They unblockade that vending machine. They go in there. Then we get the weird lipstick scene. And then that punk girl, gets killed by Greta's character and transformed.
Well, they all do pretty quick. I mean, I think
they all get dispatched pretty quickly.
I think they're just there to be cool looking demons.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's just weird that they have this long intro scene.
Yeah.
Not even in the theater. I mean, it's pretty long. I mean, it's like a good 10-minute scene.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're in there, and then they last less than their intro scene amount of time in the theater.
Yes, they are dispatched just the quickest of stuff.
And then they're just cool looking demons after that, and that's it.
That's fair. And then one of the couple, the boyfriend and girlfriend there with the two college girls, two college guys, and the couple, they get attacked, and then the woman gets a demon born out of her back.
Yep.
Which was interesting. And
it was a cool looking effect.
And then, but that birth demon kind of just disappears.
Yeah.
The rest of the movie.
Yeah, it jumps out and goes, rawr, and then just poof.
Right. So then it's just the four of them that are left. And then eventually, while they're crawling around, her friend gets attacked, changed. And the other guy realized he's like, oh, I was also attacked. I'm the chained. You have to kill me. So he grabs the samurai sword. Like, you gotta do this. You gotta do this. Kill me before I change. Don't look at me like when I'm like this, blah, 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 right? He's like, I don't want, his friend George doesn't want to do it. And then he changes and it cuts off his head. And then essentially they go around and start driving the motorcycle over the chairs, through the stands, and they're just on it, and he just has swords, and he's just going around slicing every demon as he goes.
Right. Well,
around.
He goes around the theater
10 times.
10 times.
Yeah.
I mean, he just keeps driving around and keeps slashing demons, but he keeps slashing the same ones. So it's like, obviously this sword is not doing much.
Right.
Why do you continue to do this? I mean, I guess he's trying to go out with a blaze of glory or whatever, but anyway, so he's going around. Eventually the chick falls off the back.
Yeah.
That he keeps going, and then eventually he falls off too.
And then he goes super samurai.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden a helicopter falls through the roof.
I had to rewatch that a couple times because I was distracted while watching this from the kids, but I went back and like, all right, am I missing something? Like, where this like there's something on the roof, and then the helicopter just comes and crashes down. And then they get in the helicopter like it's made out of aluminum foil.
Yeah,
just rip it apart.
Yeah, the roof was also made out of paper mache because it just fell through it.
Yeah.
This helicopter pretty much comes out of nowhere. And then crashes through the roof, and then they go in it like they're gonna hide in it, and then it very quickly becomes known they can't hide in there, they're coming right through. So then he uses the winch.
He has there's a grappling hook that he attaches the winch to.
Right.
And then grapples out through the hole and then uses the winch to harness himself and get out of the hole that the helicopter created because they can't get out any other way. And I'm trying to figure out the physics between that winch and how him using the winch would have drawn him up.
Yeah, I don't know. They didn't even know either because that looked weird looking.
It didn't make any sense.
No, yeah.
And then
nobody knew what was happening.
They get to the top, and then the cyberpunk guy's there, and they're trying to kill him, and then they spend 5 minutes trying to pry his head down with a pipe into the rebar. It takes a long time. Move your head. And he gets eventually impaled. And then they somehow get down. There's a ladder. They climb down there, and they find out that demons are infecting the entire city.
Right.
And so they're being chased by demons. And then a jeep of the dad looks 60. His daughter looks 14. And the son's 6.
The daughter was 18.
But yeah, we have enough guns for everybody. And they start driving we're driving out west. Right?
Yep. And then the best part happens where they're all driving off into the sunset, and then all of a sudden the girl changes into a demon, and the dude they just shoot her.
Yes.
And then they just keep going.
Yep. So George is the last one alive. Not even the person we were following. They drive out into the unknown. End of movie. first thoughts on this for me is I know I have these on Laserdisc. Yeah, I'm like, I had to get these because we saw them. I had to get them at this point. I had seen bits and pieces of this movie, and for me, this was very reminiscent of like the demon changes were very Deadite-ish from Evil Dead. But I also saw influence of this movie in Night of the Demons. What those demons look like, what came from this Demons movie, I feel.
It's fair, yeah.
But overall, I'm like, yeah, it was just essentially just a showcase of effects. As we discussed many times before in 80s movies, the plot is so thin that it's just from kill to kill.
Well, like I said, this movie, like I said, that was basically what I was thinking about it while I was watching the movie, is there was not really a plot.
No.
It was like, okay, there's a reason for all these people to end up in a theater, but then there was just like, watch what happens to these people in a theater. There was no like plot, like how they can like, get rid of the demon plague, or how they can like save the world, or even save themselves. It was like nothing. It was just a big brawl with the demons, and then like, one person survives, and that was it.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was definitely that was my thoughts. Your first thought too is just the same thing, I assume, right? Yeah,
right.
Kill to kill, just from kill to kill, and that's pretty much it.
Correct.
Any other thoughts when do you see any influences of like Evil Dead, or see these demon looks being elsewhere?
Not that I can tell. Not that I can remember.
Okay. Why don't you start off with the highlights then?
My highlights for this movie is the music again is great. Well, this time they actually like get like kind of well-known artists in here. I mean, you get like Billy Idol's in here. I mean, there's all kinds of like actually like contemporary music of this time period in there. And I'll also say the style is pretty cool. I mean, the style that they have in this movie is like the cyberpunk dude looks cool. The punks look cool. There's obviously some bad style, but it was like that was the style of that time.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, no, I think they looked cool. I like the style. I like the slickness of it, and I like the music. I thought it was great.
Right. Yeah, I mean, highlights for me, this may have been I'd say the first example I can think of we watched documentaries that came out a couple of years ago about people going, hey, this movie causes evil in people. Would is this possible? The first one of that? Could this been like because they're obviously watching a movie that causes them to become demons. So there's some supernatural thing somehow, right? Or like the masked guy invited all his people to bring demons into the real world. There's not a lot of lore background in this.
Right. Well, this came out in '86. So, I mean, by that point in time, I'm sure there was another movie that had that.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that highlights definitely music. Music was fantastic. And when they played the song, they played the entire song.
Yeah, correct.
Instead of just like a quick 30-minute or 30-second or minute sampler. Yeah, music was great. Effects were great. Story was lacking. But how about low points for you?
Low points would be the theater craftsmanship. That theater was built, terribly. Like people were like just like punching through like the wooden chairs. I mean, like one kick could knock over like a whole roll of theater chairs. I mean, like there's no way people could even sit in those things. They were like able to like basically chip through a porcelain wall.
Yep.
With like their bare hands, more or less. I mean, yeah, there's all kinds of craftsmanship mistakes.
Yeah. Like just how easily it tore up the chairs.
Right.
I completely agree.
Like, I don't know who the set people were on this movie, but they were bad.
Yeah, it's plaster for the paper mache for the walls, aluminum foil for the helicopter. Like he tore that door off that helicopter with the greatest of ease.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely those are great low points. Yeah, I mean, and here's a low point for me. You're not gonna hear this very often. The lore was not deep enough. To your point, right? That you don't get reasoning behind it. You don't get, how to even do anything with the demons.
Yeah, you don't even get a cursory explanation as to what's happening.
Right.
Like, you wouldn't even know these were demons unless the title of the movie told you what they were.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and no, I'll go back to one highlight is the demon popping out of her body was done really well.
Yes, it was. That was fantastic.
That of all the kills, that one's probably the best one, I think. So number of eye gouges out of 10. We'll go into Night of the Demons at some point in time on this podcast, but you can see writing wise, I felt you could tell it was Argento, but atmospheric, it wasn't him. You know what I mean? Like I think it could have done better with him behind the camera and directing it and doing the set. Having that, building the atmosphere. And really for that's why I'm bringing this down to probably like a 7.5. What about you?
I mean, that's tough. I mean, like, I want to give it less than a 7, but like, it's a kind of movie that I would probably rewatch at some point.
Right, and that's why I gave the number I did. So I'm going to rewatch it.
But I feel like it deserves a number lower than that. But I'm trying to. Okay, all right. I'll give it a 6. A 6 eye gouges out of 10.
6. That's fair.
So, like, if I have a drink, I'll rewatch it.
There you go. That's fair. That? Yep. I'm definitely making the wife watch these. I think she'll enjoy because she loves. Let's face it; these are cheese. This one is a cheese movie. I love cheese movies.
Yes, I know.
So. All right, why don't you bring us home with then Demons 2?
Demons 2. Demons 2 basically starts off, it's instead of a theater, it's a high-rise, like a high-rise apartment building. So there's a whole bunch of different people that are like, in their different apartments. The main one that I guess we'll focus on first is the birthday party. Which is Sally is having a birthday party, and she has a whole bunch of, party 80s folks over to celebrate her birthday party with the loud music and all that kind of stuff, right?
The 80s is hard in this movie.
Right, yeah, right. So it's like Sally is the only real person we're introduced to there, and then like all of her friends, which there's a significant number of them.
I'd call them yuppies.
Right. Okay, and then we have the apartment with the the yuppie dude with the pregnant wife.
Which I couldn't tell if she was pregnant when I first saw her.
Well, whatever. Yeah, she's pregnant. The character is pregnant. Yes. Then there's the little kid that's home alone. There's the gym.
Yeah.
That's apparently there with like the guy who plays the gentleman in the first movie is now the gym trainer in this movie.
Yes.
Ripper from the first movie is the security guard in this movie. Yeah. There is a couple other like minor characters that I can tell they're playing different characters, but they're the same actors.
Yeah. Yeah.
I say that who else? I guess none of the other people really matter, right?
Correct.
Anyway, anyway. So what happens is Sally is like not having a good time at her birthday party, right? So she kind of goes and locks herself in the other room, like she's upset.
Because one guy invited, Jason?
Well, no, this guy, like, okay, the party is going on, right? The phone won't stop ringing. So the one dude that's sitting next to the phone is like, hey, is anybody going to answer this phone? Nobody's answering it. So he picks it up, and it's some guy basically asking if he can come to the party. He's like, yeah, sure, come to the party. Yes. And so he hangs up, and she's like, oh, who is that? He's like, oh, it was Jacob. Oh, Jacob, what'd you tell him? Oh, I told him to come to the party. Like, why would you do that? She like cried and like ran in the room and like locked herself in. The dude's like, what?
I was almost expecting the song "It's My Party." I cry if I want to.
And they're like, well, you better go downstairs and wait for him to come, and then tell him not to come in. Anyway, it was stupid, but
they got rid of the nerd.
Yeah. So he was like the nerd character. So Sally is in the room, like all upset, and she's watching this movie. Now the movie is kind of sort of like the movie of the first one, where it's like people. Exploring a town, but it's like, in the, I guess in an urban area. So there's like this like city that has a wall around it. And they go outside of the wall, and they're looking for demons, right? They're looking for like demon memorabilia. Okay. Like apparently demons had attacked outside a long time ago. So they're going out to try to find demon stuff because it's worth a whole bunch of money.
Right. And so the voiceovers, they're saying, demon attack happened once. When will it happen again?
Right. Yeah. So they find like a little demon claw on the ground and they get all excited. Anyway, they get in like this alley and they find like an actual demon that's like all like kind of like mummified, like trapped underneath a beam.
Yes.
And of course, like somebody like cuts their hand and then they're like trying to like move this beam while the person that cuts their hand is dripping blood into the demon's mouth.
Yes.
So the demon like reanimates, and then essentially like, where it kills people, it starts chasing them. That's not important. The important part is that it like senses the camera and then starts coming through the television.
Yes. Now a few people are watching this, and we'll discuss this a little bit later. Movie, documentary, whatever it was. Pretty much everyone in the high rise had this TV on to this show or movie at the same time. Right. But
once the guy is coming out towards Sally, all their other TVs go blank.
Correct.
So yeah, the only one that matters is the one that's coming out, and it comes out, the demon like comes out into Sally's room. Sally gets all upset, but essentially she gets scratched by this demon and becomes a demon herself.
Right, because I think in this they find out that like they essentially the reason why they talk about the claw is because that's how they pass on the demonic traits.
Right.
Right. So one scratch from that, they'd pass it on.
Right. So she becomes a demon. They had decided to like have birthday cake without her. Like they basically like they light the candles and everything, and they're like, "Oh, where's Sally? Oh, she's in her room. Oh, we should go get her. Sally, come on out. It's your birthday party." Anyway, So she comes out and of course attacks everybody. Basically, everybody becomes demons.
Yep.
And then in the process of attacking and killing and becoming demons, they start bleeding profusely like through the floor, and then their blood is like acid, and it's
alien blood.
Yeah, and it's like eating away at like the roof rafters and the floors and everything, and it starts dripping through the different floors. And basically like people that it's dripping on these other floors start becoming demons immediately.
Yes.
So like there's one guy, and like it's funny because you never see that in a gym anymore. But like the big huge like sauna
that's like a steam box.
A one person sauna that's like around his neck,
Yep.
And it drips on him and he becomes a demon. Anyway, so at this point in time, the movie just becomes again the showcase, just like the theater did, and now it's just in a high rise. So demons are killing everybody. The gym gets attacked. The gym people retreat to a parking garage to where they manage to like barricade themselves in, and so they're okay at this point in time. But they do realize they can't. You mean
they pick up and move cars?
Yes, exactly. But yeah, they can't get out because the garage won't open. And they can't crash through. They try crashing through as well. They can't get out. So they're trapped in there, but at least they're barricaded, and so the demons can't get to them. Right. But the demons are basically rampaging all through the apartment building. There's a lot of people getting killed that we don't know who they are. We don't care who they are. There's let's see, I'm trying to think. The dad of the pregnant lady, or no, the husband of the pregnant lady gets trapped on an elevator with a hooker.
Oh, you just she's definitely a hooker.
Yeah. So yeah, but the hooker's like got like claustrophobia or something, and is like freaking out.
And she doesn't like the dark.
And yeah, she doesn't like the dark. She had claustrophobia, whatever. So they keep trying to get out. They can't get out. They eventually finally get out, and then she becomes a demon. And so yeah, like he has to like kind of go through the whole building trying to get back to his wife. The kid that was living alone, the part that I thought was funny was he answers the phone and he's like, "Oh, is your daddy home? No, my daddy's not home. Oh, is your mommy home? No, my mommy's not home. Nobody's home. I'm here by myself."
Yes.
So, like, this is like a PSA. Like, this is like what not to say when someone calls you as a child home alone. So anyway, long story short, this kid gets attacked, becomes a demon.
Yep.
And then he goes to pregnant lady's door, crying, like saying, "Oh, I'm home alone. I'm really scared. I don't know what's going on." So she opens the door a little bit to figure out what's going on. The kid's demon, eventually comes through. She has like a kind of a, room by room fight where she keeps closing the door and then he keeps working his way through the door. She eventually folds him up in like one of those folding beds that goes up into the wall.
Well, that wasn't the demon. That wasn't the kid.
Oh, is that afterwards?
That's the puppet that comes out of him.
Well, whatever. She fights the thing. She eventually traps it, and then it does the same thing where the demon did in the first movie, where it like another demon came out of the kid's body.
Yes.
And then she was fighting that thing, and then she put it in the fold up bed. And then as she was like, fighting and it was getting close to getting her, then the husband finally comes in. And they get out of that. So then they're going around. Did they ever they get to the gym, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they eventually get to the parking garage. On the parking garage, they basically like weaponize themselves. They have like Molotovs, and like one guy has a shotgun, but that's the only real weapon they have. But otherwise, they just have a bunch of like, sticks and
pizza pans,
poles, pizza pans. Yeah, there's a bunch of random stuff. So basically, there's like this big like standoff battle between them and the demons.
Yep.
So where basically everyone dies.
Yes.
The only ones that are still alive are the guy and his pregnant wife.
Yep.
And so they go running up because they figure they can't get out at all. So they're running up the stairwell all the way up to the roof. And as they're going up there, he figures out some way to like make the gas line explode or something.
Yeah.
So he waits until all the demons are by this gas line thing. The gas line explodes and it kills almost all the demons. And then they go up to the roof, and then Sally, the original demon, gets up, and she's still okay, but the rest of them are gone.
Yeah.
So she gets up to the roof, and then there's like, they get to the top, and they have to like rappel down to like a different level of the roof. And then they rappel down, but then Sally like slides down the rope behind them.
Which the way he repelled, let's just point this out, with his wife who is in labor at this point in time,
right,
bouncing her off the building. He could have just slid down the rope without bouncing off the building. Let's face it.
Well, okay. Maybe he had like SWAT team training.
Maybe.
So and then he runs in. They run into the nearest like building, which happens to be like a video studio.
Yeah.
But when they're in the video studio, she comes in to attack them, but they figure out that she's blind.
Yes.
So they kind of dispatch her fairly quickly and easily, but then they realize that she's like somehow still alive in all the video monitors, and she's like basically going to be coming out of the video monitors like the first demon did.
Yeah.
So they run around and they smash all the monitors.
Yep.
And then that's it.
Yep.
Movie over.
Movie over. Yeah. So, what are your first thoughts on this?
I mean, again, it's basically like the plot of the first one. They just changed the theater to the high rise.
Yes.
I mean, it's more or less the same. I mean, it's better lit. So, because there's, I guess it's easier to showcase things, but yeah, I mean, it's basically like just a true sequel. It's like literally take the storyline from the first one and just the same storyline in the second one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, yeah, that's essentially what it was. It was essentially just the same movie,
Yeah.
just slightly cheesier, and that was that's basically all there is to it.
Yes, it definitely is cheesier, without a doubt. But like I said, it's an interesting thing. Like I was rewatching it, and we discussed it off pod. We'll discuss it here, obviously, too. Was whether what they were watching was a movie or a documentary of it actually happening. Because what made me think it was a movie was essentially it showed that gun-toting family that saved George and Cheryl at the end of the first one was different people playing them. So to me, there's confusion of if this was if the first one actually took place versus it being a movie in this movie's universe or whatnot.
Well, it was just it was very confusing because there was stuff happening where I wasn't too sure what was going on.
Yes,
and that like characters that were in the movie were later on in the high rise.
Yes.
Again, like with no explanation on how they got there. I mean, you assume
Correct.
that they also came through the TV, but they don't show that. They're just there.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, again, when I was watching it, I took it as the first movie happened and the world like got taken over by demons, but one city managed to wall itself up and like leave them out. And then they were still living inside this city. And that was where the high rise was.
Okay.
Because I mean, like the demons came after them and they didn't seem all that surprised. Like there wasn't a whole lot of like, what are these? There was just more like, get the hell away from them. Like it seemed like they already knew what they were.
Yeah.
That's why those clues kind of led me to believe that the movie that they were watching was like a real documentary and not just a movie.
Okay.
But, I mean, I could be wrong.
So I took it as a movie. Yeah. I took it as a movie. It just didn't seem like a continuation of the first one. You know what I mean? It seemed just like to be, like we also discussed, like Return of the Living Dead 2, where Return of the Living Dead 2 had the same actors who caused the zombie outbreak again, but in a different way.
Well, I watched Demons and Demons 2 back to back.
Yeah.
And I was drinking.
Okay.
So by the time we were getting towards the end of 2, I was pretty deep in my cups, as they say.
Yes.
Those might be why some things weren't making sense.
Yeah, I watched them back to back as well without drinking. Maybe I should have been.
Maybe. Like I said, they were. I think they were. I'm probably seeing them as better than they are because I was drinking while watching them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they're a true fashion of a sequel to a horror movie like that, where it doesn't make any sense. I said we'll get that into Night of the Demons, where it doesn't make any sense. They're there again. It's just a different atmosphere, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. This is definitely going to be a rewatch, just to try to figure things out a little bit better for me. Okay, so what about highlights for you?
Highlights is again the music. The music is great in this one. They did the same kind of thing what they did in the first one. They actually had like real, like normal contemporary music of that time period. It was pretty cool. I mean, they had like songs by like the Cult in there, and I mean, it was good. It was
the Smiths were in there, as well. Yeah,
it was fun. It was good. It was like I said, it was like an actual like real soundtrack. It's like most movies in the 80s, they had songs that tried to sound like certain genres or artists, but it wasn't them, and they always sounded terrible and cheesy. But this is one of the rare ones that actually like uses the real music of the time.
Yeah.
Which again, it's just odd that this movie is the one that picks the real music, where like the big, blockbuster movies are picking this, generic stuff that they're making for the movie.
Right. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, highlights for me, the dog was pretty interesting to see a dog transform into a demon. Like it had eyes underneath its nose and just like peeled back, and like I said, it was interesting. And
Yeah, it
to
looked
me,
like a demon came out of his mouth
yeah,
and was like pushing off the dog head as like a hood onto its real head.
yes. And then I think it was interesting having the different people, well, the same actors play different people, and it's kind of just a way to do it. That's why I'm comparing it to, Night or Night of the Living Dead, or not Night of the Return of the Living Dead 1 and 2. It was the same idea, and that's just what it felt like to me. But yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely highlights were they went. I'd say bigger in some of their effects. The demons.
Well, like I said, there was better lighting in this one. Like I said, they did a lot more stuff. Like I said, they had the kid demon, they had the dog demon, they had the the little baby demon that came out. I mean, yeah, there was a lot more effects to it. I'm assuming because the first one did well.
Yeah, yeah. So it was a more polished movie,
right?
I would say. What about low points for you?
I think my lowest point is Sally. She was so freaking annoying. I mean, she was just like having a party, and she was just not happy the whole time. I mean, her acting was terrible, and I mean, she was just an annoying character. So it was almost like you're happy when she, turned into a demon because it shut her up.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Low points for me is the pseudo punks they had in the car this time.
Oh, Jacob.
Yeah, I never get caught speeding. Like, okay, they're doing an Easter egg and homage to the punks in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, but that really Jacob was one of it, and that just didn't go anywhere other than crashing into the car of the Home Alone kids' parents.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, again, that's
it.
Yeah, they had this long, weird like intro of like Jacob coming to this building, like all this big like lead up to it, and then like it never went anywhere.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's my low point. It's just that went nowhere. All right. So, how many eye gouges out of 10 would you?
Eye gouges out of 10. I'll give it 5. 5 eye gouges out of 10. Just one worse than the first one.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was thinking as well. That I would go down about 1 as well. I'm going to rewatch these. I have no doubt about that in my mind at this point in time.
I'll probably rewatch them, but again, I will probably be drinking again when I do. So,
I'm going straight down to a 6. I'm going 1.5 lower. I said I saw things in it from other movies about demons that may have inspired like Night of the Demons and stuff like that. But I also did see what feels like Evil Dead 2 vibes that they kind of picked up on for the demon effects and what they did and how they sounded.
Now, there was one effect that I know I've seen somewhere else, and I don't know where. It was probably like, I don't know, some kind of like, horror, ad or movie or something. But I know I've seen the effect before, and I know I've seen it a bunch of times. I don't know where from.
What was the effect?
Specifically, it was when the first demon was coming through the TV.
Yes.
And they showed his like actual face, but it was like getting weirdly like stretched out as it was like coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So like there was like a pressure pushing on the tube, but and his face was like getting distorted because it was being pushed out.
Yes.
Like that scene I've seen somewhere before, and I don't know where. Like it was probably in somebody's, they have like intros to certain things. And they have like bits and cuts of like other movies and things like that in them. It's like, it was like one of those type of things that was from, and I have no idea where.
I'll probably never know. I feel like Freddy Krueger's done that.
Yeah, but no, it was specifically that scene, like exactly that. So like whoever did this took the chunk out of Demons 2 and put it in their little thing. but I have
entirely
no
possible.
idea where it was from.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. That did look familiar. We have never seen any of these movies, but I feel like we knew a decent amount about these without watching them.
Well, again, I knew of them. I mean,
Yeah.
I've known
Yes.
of them for a long time. It just they haven't been high on my list.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I'd say overall, with our first spotlight on the works of Dario Argento, pretty solid outing.
Yeah, no, I mean, the first two, like the actual, like full Argento movies were outstanding.
Right. And it really makes me excited to watch more Argento movies.
Right.
And that's what I like about this podcast is that we're doing this and find stuff like this that we definitely did not know about, I would say, in the 80s and 90s. You know what I mean?
Right.
And rarely we would never have seen these in our video store days. I don't recall ever seeing these.
I don't either.
For rent.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the covers of these until, my adult life when I was looking into stuff like that. I don't remember ever seeing these in the movie rental place.
So, yeah. So, why don't you anything else do you want to add to this? Other than we're going to be doing more Argento movies in the near future.
I mean, yeah, at some point in time we will.
Yeah. Okay. Want to take us out then?
Sure. Join us next week as we review Killer Machines, which will include the fantastic Chopping Mall, Death Machine, Screamers, and the newest entry into this category, M3 Gan, or Megan. And there will be spoilers for that, obviously, because it's just coming out.
Came out 2 days ago at the time of this recording.
Yeah. So it will be a movie that we will be seeing in the theater.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We'll be seeing it in the theater. M3 Gan, and then we'll go over it next week. But yeah, I gotta watch the other three too. I've watched Chopping Mall fairly recently.
So did I. I'm gonna watch it again.
Obviously. Yeah, I mean, I'll watch it again. It's not close enough to where I remember everything, but I know I've watched it recently. But the other one, Screamers, I have not seen in a while. I have seen it before
because it has Peter Weller.
Well, it's Peter Weller, and it's based on a Philip K. Dick story. So I've watched all of those. Death Machine, I don't think I've ever seen, and of course M3 Gan, I have not seen.
Yep. Okay.
2 and 2.
Yep. Hey, that's a good mix. That's fine. So this has been Graveyard saying, have you checked on the children?
This is Salem saying, long live the new flesh.
Good night.
Good night.